Am I okay? I am. I am. That was a hard week. When was that? It wasn't this last week. It was the week before.
Week
And
before.
my cousin passed suddenly. He was only 58 years old. Only 58. And it wasn't in any way expected.
Gee.
He was at with his company's conference, and it was on his way back. He'd gotten off the plane with his wife. His wife and his daughter had been visiting him at the conference. And it was fun. I was watching on Facebook like all these great pictures of them having great meals and having fun. It was in Orlando. They landed in Chicago. They got in their car. They were driving home, and he started to go through all of those signs of a heart attack.
Your
And
DVT.
she was able to get him into a fire station where they were able to then get him to the hospital. But it turned out it wasn't a heart attack. It was an aortic rupture.
Oh, geez.
And as soon as the doctors saw that it was an aortic rupture, they just stopped. They're like, there's nothing we can do. And he passed immediately.
So everything got changed.
Yeah, everything changed. And we were supposed to go on like a little mini vacation, and I flew to Chicago to help. I get there, and the company is, of course, reeling. He didn't own the company. He was an employee of the company, but he was a really big piece of that company. The
Sure.
company's reeling. Everyone's in mourning. And now it's like trying to figure out what happens, what comes next.
Mm.
And, it's interesting to see a life looking back at it. And he did so much for that company. And I wonder now, looking back, would he have traveled as much as he did? He traveled probably 75, 80% of his time. And he'd been doing that for about 25 years. And I
Wow.
know he had a great time. I know he loved it. But I think he was planning on a nice retirement of slowing down, you know?
That's always the question, right? I mean, I think everybody asks themselves that question every single day. Like, is what I'm doing what I want to be doing? Is it worth it? What's the cost to it?
Yeah.
I think it's tough not to, but I don't know. I always think of the quote. What is it? The goal is not to kind of safely tiptoe towards death, but
Oh, yeah.
Hunter Thompson, I think, has a quote like that. But there's
Mm.
also other ones, Jack London, all kinds of people. So I think you kind of use what you need at the time. Yeah, maybe never travel and just spend all time at home with family and stuff is good for a while. But then you could also see how if you looked at somebody's life who just did that and they never chased anything, never traveled. I
Yeah.
feel just as concerned for the people that have never traveled or gone and they have something inside of them. So it's really hard. It's really hard to know what there is. So I don't even know. And I don't necessarily think balance is the answer either, in the traditional sense of balance, because I mean, you'll never achieve anything great if you're balanced all the time,
Totally.
right? So
Completely right
how do you
there.
decide? You
Well,
know,
there's that quote, women who behave don't make history.
yeah, yeah,
And I think that could be true for everybody. That doesn't even have to be a genderized, quote. I mean,
right.
if you behave, if you play by the rules, you're not taking risks, you're not innovating, you're living quietly and tiptoeing through to death.
I think you have to. I forget who said this, but for whatever, everybody can say something in a different way that can resonate with a different type of person. And
Mhm.
I think it was Ed Milet. I don't know if you've heard of this guy.
No.
He does a big podcast now. He talks about counting the cost. Like if you're you can never achieve anything great if you're
Mhm.
always negotiating the cost of what it takes to achieve that. Because if you're constantly in your mind is like, is it worth it? Is
Yeah.
this worth it? Is it going to pay off? Is it worth it? I think we know as coaches, this in people. If you're always wondering, like they want to guarantee, like before I put in any effort, I want to know that my effort's going to pay off. I'll make it very practical for what you and I both do. If I'm going to spend effort targeting my resume, I want to know they're going to get back to me. Otherwise, I'm not going to spend an hour or whatever it takes to target
Yeah.
my resume anymore. I'm not going to do my LinkedIn profile unless I know that it's going to get me hot, because people just how they operate. So if you set a
Mhm.
big goal for yourself, if you're negotiating the cost in your head, other people will negotiate the cost for you. It's not worth it. Not worth it.
Yeah.
Look what you're doing. You're killing yourself. You can't do this. And so if you're constantly thinking about the cost, it's really hard to ever get to whatever that is. So there is a value, I think, in setting that goal and saying, whatever the cost is, I'm going to go out. And it can be different for anybody.
Yeah.
Some people, that goal could be family, not traveling. Other people, the goal could be traveling in business. It's such an individualized thing.
Yeah, I even see that even in the most straight way of interpreting the quote, right? I mean, I've seen people who are cheap trying to save money, and the amount of effort and energy and time
I know.
to save whatever it is, it doesn't really, make sense. It is an interesting thought. At the same time, I think you have to weigh it too. There's certain things you're not going to see an immediate response to, you
Sure.
know? And so to really get too stuck on what is the outcome, what are the results, what is that percentage? Even then you might be wasting valuable time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, people ask me that, what's the percent of chances that, my situation is going to work out? I'm like, well, it's either 0 or 100. So it's
Is
0%.
that 50%?
There's 0% if you don't fully decide to do whatever it takes to get it. But if you fully decide and you never give up, it's 100%. I mean, like Hemingway, right? A person can be destroyed but not defeated. So like if you never give up, you can never be defeated. It's just a certain kind of mentality. Like I get it. I just think there's a lot, like what you said, is I think people have a hard time even understanding leverage. Like a lot of people don't even know that debt is also called leverage.
Yeah.
So I work with people who have doctorates, et cetera, but there's different types of doctorates. So I'll give an example to somebody who's done a different, like a PhD or a PsyD or something, and I'll compare them to an MD. An MD knows they're going to go into debt for like $200,000. They know they're going into debt for that amount, but they also know they're going to get like a $200,000 job afterwards.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if you're going to get a $100,000 job, or if you're going to get a $150,000 job, how bad do you actually want that job? Are you going to go into debt $100,000, $150,000? Dude, some of them won't even go into debt $2,000, $5,000. No, I mean, it's crazy to think about it. And so it's all kind of a mindset. I had the same thing when I wanted to get my first book published. I was like, wait a sec, I could fly to go find these publishers. Like I have to go pay for networking events just to be around people. This makes no sense to me. Like in my logical brain, I'm like, when you first think about it, I'm going to pay to go hang out with people.
Yeah.
That's, but then of course you're like, of course I'm going to go pay to hang out with more exclusive people because there's no other way to crack in to industry. I mean,
and there are some networking events that cost $25,000.
Yeah, plate.
To get in the right room with the right people, there's
Exactly
a cost associated with it. What you're saying is really, it's the investment. Like, what are you willing to invest? And
Sure.
and I do believe that you have to invest in yourself. And I do believe it's the best payoff ever when you do. But I think for some people, it's maybe they're raised in such a way, maybe they haven't seen enough people do it, but you do need to look at yourself and say, how can I upskill? How can I educate? How can I brand? What are the things that you can do to make yourself the best that you can be so you can tap into those opportunities?
I agree. I mean, I think a lot of people, if you come out of a certain background, you kind of have what's now called like the kind of the Dave Ramsey mindset, right? You don't spend, you don't take on any debt, you don't do anything, which is okay, we'll get you to a certain point. But then once you get to that certain point, if you want to start a business, if you want to really make bigger investments, let's say, even if you want to invest in something that's very traditionally stable, like real estate, whatever, like, of course, you're going to have to take on some sort of debt. So I think, I don't know, like for me, I'll give you a ridiculous story. When I was, so when I grew up, we grew up like poor. I mean, for like this country poor, like, we had, my parents went bankrupt. We had, cars got repoed, different stuff.
Goodness.
When it was the worst, there was you're eating at soup kitchens, stuff like this. So which is the best experience ever in one sense, because you're a kid, no idea. Kids are you're just like, okay, I'm doing this today, no matter. But you look back and it keeps you in more of a growth mindset, but it also holds you back because you have limiting beliefs. So like I was like the last person that I knew, friends, whatever, to even like think about owning a car or leasing a car or whatever. Like I would literally borrow cars. Like I had this thing as a kid of my parents' car getting repoed, whatever. I was like, I can't do this. Like I had this very poor mindset. So I never allowed myself to even consider doing that. like seriously, I would rent car. Like I would find deals to rent a car
Yeah.
repeatedly with the, like for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. And then I would turn it in and get another car rental because I was so scared to like buy or lease a
Yeah.
car. And then I finally
Yeah.
bought or leased it. I'm like, this is the stupidest thing ever. It's actually overall cheaper for me to do this, and then when I bought my first car, of course you can sell it, whatever else. And so I just didn't have the money. I mean, it seems like a dumb example maybe, but it's an easy way where something can be very basic for certain people. Like, of course you do this, and then the car can actually take you to different things and to get clients or to go to your job, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you can have a real limited mindset. And so you just got to really probe yourself to say, where are my limits? Like, where
Yeah.
am I saying I can't go to that conference? I can't do that. There's no way for me to find a way to, there's no way for me. I can't gain any more money or income. There's no way. I'm like, really? Like, have you ever heard of Labor Ready? Like, go down at 5 a.m. to Labor Ready in your local town and go move some cement blocks. Like, there's always a way to actually do it, but we have these kind of limitations. And so I think thinking about what your limitations are can be really helpful, because if you approach things from a possibility mindset, right, you're going to be more creative in solutions.
I was just talking to a coach last week, and he walks his clients through radical forgiveness. Have you ever heard of radical forgiveness?
Yeah, I've heard of this.
And he said how you almost have to go back through your life, and if you find yourself in a traumatic moment in time, and you don't heal emotionally from it, you will continue to experience it over and over and over again in different ways. And
Mm,
many times you yourself are navigating towards it, that calamity, to experience it again and again.
mm,
And the idea of this radical forgiveness is you need to figure out, you don't even need to get to the core, but you've got to identify like a moment in which this has occurred.
mm,
And then you need to, forgive yourself, accept it, go through whatever the healing mechanism is. But
mm.
once you do that, all of the instances heal and you can now be free of it. And
No.
I think it's an interesting concept. I mean, I hear you talking about it, and in some ways it was you experienced that with your parents, the car situation, and you probably were experiencing it in other ways as well. But once you can get to it, you can heal it, then you can move beyond it. But I think for a lot of people, they're blind to it. And so they keep reliving it over and over in these blocks over and over and over again.
Mm,
So do you journal, Isaiah?
yeah.
I journal. Journaling to me is such a huge, huge piece of my life and in processing. When you go back into your old journals, at least for me, I've
Mm,
found that there's a lot of cyclical experiences. And so what I hear you saying, what I do believe, it's you have to, what is the block? And like, why don't you want to go to that networking event? Why don't you want to invest in your future? Maybe did someone say to you early on that you're not deserving?
are you
You know,
afraid?
are you afraid? Like what? Like really drill into it, and you may even find that this happens over and over and over again.
Sure. No, I love that. I think the only way to heal that or get past it is you have to actually do it. I think most of it is tied to fear of losing an identity. So identity is so powerful. The forgiveness stuff is, if you keep going back to whatever that is, you're going back to the identity that's comfortable for you.
Hmm.
Like, so for me, figuring out what that identity was, like if your identity is, you're a poor person. If your identity is, I can't afford that. I can't afford that. Right. That's one of the worst things you can possibly say out loud
Yeah.
to even your family around you. I can't afford that. Can't afford it. You got to go stretch yourself to see and be around things that are higher and better, and find a way to be around people who can afford that. And it's not just a money thing, but it also could be a health thing.
Yeah.
I'm just not healthy. I just have a slow metabolism, right? You hear these
Hmm.
kind of things. But so I think changing the identity is really the most important part, because those trauma moments, they lock in that identity.
Yeah.
So if you have that, you have a traumatic moment of health, you have a traumatic moment of being poor, you have a traumatic moment in a relationship, and then you find yourself just gravitating back to that identity. It's the weirdest thing, right? It's like somehow comfortable, but it's like the worst thing for you. I'm the kind of person where relationships don't work, and you just find yourself coming back to that over and over because that's your identity.
Yeah.
And so doing the new, and so it's very scary to change your identity. Like,
And it's uncomfortable and it's
yeah,
awkward feeling. And
No.
you're in these moments where you're like, I feel like a poser. I feel like
Yeah.
a fraud. This is not who I am.
Right.
And
Right.
and and we all are, we hear about authenticity all the time, and you do feel it inauthentic, when you're there and people talk about the imposter syndrome. Well, maybe that's you in flux,
Sure. Of
right?
course.
Maybe it's you're getting closer to the new you. But those feelings you have to sort of let go and embrace it for what they are. Embrace and let go at the same time. I know that sounds insane, but you recognize, hey, if I can stay in this moment a little bit longer, maybe I will get used to it. And
Yeah.
maybe it will start to feel natural and authentic.
I was just last night talking to somebody named Swati. She got hired, like her third job in industry, has a doctorate, but had to look at different jobs because of how tough the job market is, right? So she had these other jobs that she was interested in. She said, like, these recruiters and hiring managers kept telling me, like, you can do this job, you can do this job. And she's like, I can't do this job. I've never done this job. And I'm listening to this. And I'm like, oh my God, this is our problem. Like, we'll have other people be like, go do this. You can do this. We want you to do this. We see these skills in you, and we can still say, whoa, 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 whoa. So I think there's always the fear, it's the fear of failure, which is the easy one to identify, but also the fear of success, which I think is a little bit misleading. It's really just the fear of being in that uncomfortable place where you're a new person and you're being judged by others who might think, who do you think you are? Right. Or, and then you're nervous because you're learning it for the first time. So it's just discomfort. That's all it is.
Hmm. That's a lot to unpack. That's a lot of good stuff,
Deep,
though.
deep. Yeah.
I think to those who are listening, it's taking that moment, right, to sit quietly and maybe even journal a little bit, and to start to recognize what is holding you back. What are those fears? And what do you want? Right? Like really envision that. I think in some ways that can be the thing that leads you down the path, because if you don't have that vision of where you want to go or what you want to do, you can't create that path to get there. So maybe
Yeah.
the first step really is, allowing yourself to envision that goal, where you want to go, and then figuring out what are those roadblocks, and recognizing, as much as we want to say, oh, it's society, oh, it's other people, oh, like, remove those excuses and say, what's really stopping you? Is it something internal?
And I think it is. I mean, it's funny you said the external stuff. Internal is, I would say, it depends. Internal is where it has to start. But then you have to know, once you get the internal pieces right and you actually start putting it out there are external factors, mainly people, that you have to just start caring less of what other people think. And you just got to cut yourself off from the people that are telling you can't do it. Because I see this all the time. Like, a lot of people, they have something inside of them. They know they can do more. They want to do more, but they're really concerned about how they're going to look. And I mean, it might be different for you and I, because I think once you start a business or get out there, like, you've faced a lot of haters at a totally different level that most people can't even fathom, because you're more public. Just like the more public somebody becomes, the more it dials up. But I think you have to accept that too. Like, a lot of people have a hard time with it. Like, you might have to cut off people. You might have to not care at all what that person thinks for you to go and do something. Like, you might have to care about what other people think for you to get into a job that's better than the job they're getting into.
Yeah.
For you to leave the work and get into a role, for you to go after your goal, for you to be healthier than the people you're around. They're not going to like that. And so you have to get used to that, and you have to allow yourself to feel some sort of resentment or whatever from other people. I think a lot of people don't talk about that a lot. They talk about generally, like, haters, whatever. But today, that's the biggest thing. You want to do something new, and you start putting yourself out there to do it. You're going to have to get past yourself, and then you're going to have to get past, right, the other crabs trying to pull you back. There's these different types of experiments of primates where the primates climb up a pole to get a banana at the top, but they do like something with like a mild electrical shock every now and then. And so the primates learn that there's an electrical shock, and eventually they stop going to get the bananas. And then eventually, when one tries to climb up to get the banana, the others pull it back down. And then they do this for like generations of the primates. And so it gets to the point where nobody's experienced the shock.
Mhm.
at all. They're all new primates. And when somebody tries to climb up the pole to get the banana, they all pull them down, and nobody lets them try to get the banana. And so that's what's going to happen generationally, families, groups of friends, communities. And so I think that's all intertwined, because you're going to have to make a decision for yourself in your own life, what's best for you. Going back full circle, whether that's traveling as much as you want for your life, staying home with family, getting a certain type of job, not getting it, pushing yourself to live a higher lifestyle in terms of health or wealth or whatever. That all has to start from within. And then you have to understand it's going to be a bit of a battle against external forces for you to live the life you want.
But it is possible. It is absolutely possible. Isaiah, thank you so much for this conversation. This was
Thank you, Donna.